Let me tell you a little bit about Dr. Allen. In addition to his teaching responsibilities here at DTS, he preaches in churches across the country, speaks at Bible conferences, regularly leads study tours in Israel, Turkey, Greece, and has been a biblical and a theological consultant for Maranatha Music. He's written a dozen books, was one of the senior editors for the New King James Version, Old Testament, the New King James Version, Old Testament, and was the Old Testament editor for both the Nelson Study Bible, boy, I love that Bible, especially the notes in it, and the Nelson's New Illustrated Bible Commentary. And aside from his academic pursuits, Dr. Allen loves to ride his bicycle. It's one that fits into his suitcase. He can just carry it with him on the plane. I want to add one other thing. I was just talking with him, and in June, matter of fact, June the 17th, he's going to be speaking at the National Worship Leaders Conference in San Jose, California. Boy, do I wish I could be there for that. But let's welcome Dr. Allen today as he begins our summit.
Well, good morning. I'm just curious, how many of you are new students to Dallas Seminary this summer? There are a few. Well, welcome. We've just dispersed a whole generation of graduates, and seems like that was just this weekend. And now classes are starting again. The prophet Micah, the great prophet Micah, was a contemporary of Isaiah. And in the 730s BC, they were both speaking about the sins of the people of Judah. And one sample passage is in chapter 3. By the way, summer chapel, my instructions, read a Bible verse, tell a story, make an application, tell them to go. So in Micah chapter 3, verse 11, we have a heart of his condemnation of the people of Judah at the time. He says, her heads, these are the people in Jerusalem, judge for a bribe. Her priests teach for pay. Her prophets divine for money. And in the book of Jeremiah, 100 years later, he writes in chapter 2, verse 8, the teachers of the law do not even know the Lord. Priests, prophets, Torah teachers, and judges, corrupt, no love for God. A number of years ago, I began my studies at Dallas Seminary in the doctoral program, and I was afforded a great honor. I was made an instructor on the faculty of Dallas Seminary in my doctoral studies, and I taught 2 sections of first-year Hebrew. The honor was a lot greater than the pay, and I needed to supplement my salary here, and Jerry Formanak, who was a doctoral student at the time, told me about part-time opening where he worked, a classical radio station, WRR, here in Dallas. And so he said, Ron, you love languages, you love classical music, you know something about it, and he says, I love your speaking voice, why don't you audition for the job? So I went through a battery of tests, music knowledge and pronunciation of composers and performers and knowledge of orchestras, and then audition tapes, and I got the job. You're listening to the world of music on WRR-FM in Dallas. So I got the job. My biggest day in big-time radio, by the way, it's a major station, 100,000 watts. My biggest day was a Sunday in July, 1969. I was in my booth, and I had the sound in the studio down as I was listening to the AM feed for a news report I knew was coming soon. And it came just as I was coming to the end of a section of a record. And when I heard it, I was so excited, I let the last bars, last measures play, and I lifted the stylus with a lever, and I turned on the mic switch. In my biggest moment in radio, I said, "The Lunar Landing Module Eagle has just set down on the moon." Then I counted to 5. Now we return to our program of Baroque trumpet concerti, the music of Heinrich Schütz. And I turned off the mic switch, and I thought about the incongruity of Baroque music by Heinrich Schütz when we had just landed on the moon. And I just roared in laughter, and then I scrambled around the room to find moon music for the next hour, Clair de Lune and Moonlight Sonata and other wonderful things. So that was my greatest moment in big-time radio. But it didn't start out so great. It was Christmas week 1968 when I was to be trained for a week. I had no radio experience whatever. I'd never done it. And Texas is an open shop state, so I didn't have to have a license or experience when I was hired, but I knew nothing. And so Monday evening from 5 to 11, I sat beside the evening announcer, and I took all kinds of notes. I asked all manner of questions. I watched everything he did, and I thought, well, a few nights of observation, it'll be great. Tuesday I showed up early, and the afternoon guy said, "You know, the night guy that you're supposed to intern with during the week, he's gone. You're on your own tonight." And I thought, after one night? And I thought, oh no. He says, "Don't worry, it'll be great." Well, so I remember the evening beginning, and my voice was probably a little nervous at first, but the wonderful thing about classical music, it's long form. It's not like a disc jockey having to do patter after every 3-minute song. And so I sort of got things together, and it seemed to be going all right. About 8 o'clock, little after 8, my boss came in, Eddie. Eddie was a walking catalog of classical music. His knowledge was just absolutely amazing. And he had a wonderful radio voice. In fact, he pre-recorded announcements for Love Field. And I used to, when I'd go to the airport, I'd just sit back and listen to Eddie's voice. He was so terrific. But he'd been to a Christmas party, and he'd had a lot of Christmas cheer. And he came into the room, and he bumped his knee on the sharp edge of a table, and he commented about that. And then he pointed up to the speakers in the booth, and he says, Beethoven, Beethoven. I was playing the Third Symphony, and he smiled at me, and he said, "Carry on." So then he walked down the long hallway to his office. This is at Fair Park in Dallas. And he wasn't gone very long when I heard this thundering noise coming down the hall. And he was running, and I thought the booth was soundproof, but I could hear it. And he burst into the room, and he hit his knee against a counter again, and he commented on that. And then he commented at me, and he said, "You have us off the air." And I said, "What do you mean?" I'm hearing the sound from the speakers. I was told last night what I hear from the speakers is what's over the air. He says, "I don't care what you've heard, you're off the air." He says, "Turn off that racket." Beethoven. So I lifted the stylus. Now, you don't know what this is unless you spend a lot of time with your grandparents. This is called a record. And if you really love your grandparents, you've seen one of these. So on my right are 2 turntables, and this record is playing, and I lifted the stylus with a lever from the record, and he's pacing back and forth, and he hit his knee again, and he commented on that. And then he lifted up this $150 Shure stylus with his thumb. He goes, And he says, well, the needle works. I said, Eddie, I was playing the record. And he commented about that, and he was so angry. And about that point, 2 engineers from the booth came running into the room, and they looked at Eddie, and they said, what is the matter with you guys? Are you both drunk? And Eddie says, it's this new announcer. He doesn't know what he's doing. He's got us off the air. And they said, why do you say that? Follow me. So we all walked down the hall till we got to his office, and he pointed up to his receiver, and he said, see, I'm not getting a sound from the radio station. And one of the engineers reached up and turned from stereo mode to FM mode, and there came the hum of the station. We'd been on the air the whole time. So he says, run back in there. So I lowered the stylus onto the record about where it was and didn't say another thing about it. The next day I talked to a friend of mine who listened to my maiden day on radio. I said, how'd it go? He said, well, you sound a little nervous at first, but then it seemed like it was going okay. But after 8, it was crazy. He said, you're playing a record, what was it, a Beethoven symphony? I said, yes. All of a sudden, it stopped. And then there was this announcement. Eddie said, make an announcement, one of those, something's wrong thing. So the announcement came across like this. We're, due to circumstances beyond our control, but Eddie, if we're not on the air, shut up and say it anyway. That was all broadcast. And then there was this pause, and then it sounded like some idiot had his thumb on the needle. And then the record started again, and you didn't say anything about it. I said I didn't know what to say. So I didn't know if I had a job or not. And I went in early just to find out, Wednesday, and the afternoon guy said, oh, you're on. I said, well, did you hear about last night? Yeah, everyone's talking about last night, but you're on. So I thought, but he says, you know what it is? It's Wednesday. I'm glad you're here early. Uh-oh. What's Wednesday? Day after Tuesday? Wednesday, that's when we do opera. And it's the responsibility of the Wednesday guy to write up introduction and interact descriptions of the opera. I hope you know what you're doing. And I had this sinking feeling. And he says, oh, it's Christmas week. We've scheduled the Messiah tonight. I suspect you'll be able to work something on that. I said, yeah, if I set my mind to it. So I went into the library and spent an hour writing up the necessary things. And then came in, and I thought, well, I don't know if I have a job, but this is going to be great. So the first 2 hours, it was scheduled music. The Messiah was to begin at 7. I looked at the programming log. At 8, in the middle of Messiah, there was a station break and a scheduled ad for preparation H. Now, H does not stand for Handel. It doesn't stand for hallelujah. And I looked at that and I thought, I can't do that. In the middle of the Messiah, play an ad for preparation H? And I sat there, forgive me, literally squirming in my seat. I thought that was pretty funny. And what in the world am I going to do? And I decided I can't do it. I won't do it. The job isn't worth it. So I wrote that on the log. I will not play this ad in the middle of this glorious music. If I'm still working next week, I'll play it as many times as you want, but not tonight. Then I sat back and I listened to Handel. And it was the speakers. It was glorious. Little after 8, Eddie came in. And he was kind of hiding his face among his many chins and just sort of looked out the side of his eye. He said, no hard feelings from last night? And I took that to mean everything's okay. And I said, no, but Eddie, there was, I can't talk now. I got to go fast. So I thought, well. So he went back to his office. And it was a repeat of the night before. He wasn't there very long before he comes running down the hall. I could hear the running. And he bursts into the room, and he says, you didn't. And I said, didn't what? You couldn't. And I said, couldn't what? You didn't play a preparation H ad in the middle of the Messiah. And I said, no, I didn't. You didn't? I couldn't. You couldn't? No, I couldn't. I said, look what I wrote. And he came and looked at that, and he kissed me on both cheeks. He says, you have a job for life? He says, I was so upset last night I didn't compare the programming log with the ad continuity. This is my job. If you had done that, I don't know what I would have done. You saved the station. He says, Ron, I'm not the kind of Christian you are probably, but anybody knows it's inappropriate to play Preparation H ad in the middle of the Messiah. You know what it's like? It's like being a teacher of Torah who doesn't know God. It's like a priest who teaches for hire. It's like a judge who renders judgment for bribes. The story of the landing on the moon and the playing of Baroque trumpet music is an incongruity, but other things are absolutely inappropriate. And the most inappropriate thing for you is to be a student at Dallas Seminary and not be able to say with every fiber of being in your heart, I love you